The Evans Gambit is a gambit characterized by the move b4 after the gioco piano, meaning it's a child of the Italian game. Being described as an unreal opening by Dutch Grandmaster Paul van der Schellen, and looking quite unusual compared to most openings which aim to get all pieces out in castle, the Evans Gambit has quickly become one of my favourites due to its ability to completely dominate the centre and allow for simple to understand attacking ideas. Being played by infamous figures such as Bobby Fischer against Ruben Fine and Garry Kasparov against Viswanathan Anand, it's strong enough to take you up pretty high in the rating ladder, falling off slightly at the master level while still being playable. If you're into chess engines, you'll likely also recognize this gambit from AlphaZero's short reign in the chess engine scene, since AlphaZero and the self-learning algorithm recognized the gambit's dynamicity and aggressive potential. This is what got my eye on the opening personally. This video isn't a complete guide to the opening, but it will cover the most popular responses to the Evans Gambit. Since this is considered an intermediate opening, I assume that anyone trying to pick it up is good enough to fill in any blanks that a video guide wouldn't cover. As I've already stated, the Evans Gambit is seen as a gioco piano, which means you have to set up the Italian game first, after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, and bishop c4. If you get the two knights defense instead, you can do something like what we all know, the fried liver, or something I've heard of, the Anderssen Gambit, which I've heard good things about, but I haven't studied yet. Might study in the future if I really care enough to. If we go back to the base position for a moment, we can start if your opponent plays the gioco piano after bishop c5, and you start the Evans Gambit by playing b4, gambiting the pawn, because if they take, you can play c3, winning a tempo on the bishop, while allowing you to play d4, and giving you a vice grip on the centre. You might notice that when analysing this opening with Stockfish, that it doesn't seem to like the Evans Gambit, with it often evaluating the opening as slightly better for black, but this tends to happen with engines and gambit openings or just early game positions in general, so I wouldn't treat it as gospel. Of course, accepting the gambit isn't guaranteed, and while declining the gambit is less common, you may still see it in your games, which warrants me covering it. But there honestly isn't much to cover at all. Bishop b6 is generally the move you want to play if you want to decline the gambit, because any other retreating bishop move is met with d4 anyway, and since there's less attackers on the d4 square, this basically sits here for free, and it gives white a huge centre. As you can see, it covers 7 of the 8 squares on the 5th rank. After bishop b6, you can have a castle, which is a pretty solid move, or you can follow theory, which states a4. The big idea around a4, at least from what I can tell, is to provide the knight with an outpost in the future, or just to push and attack the now trapped black bishop, because wherever it goes is going to get taken. Now we can cover what to do if your opponent accepts the gambit, which is where I'm more knowledgeable, because this is mostly what I get in my games. If your opponent accepts the gambit, you want to push c3, forcing it back with tempo and allowing you to develop to d4. Your opponent will commonly either play bishop a5 or bishop c5 here. Either way it doesn't matter, because you want to push d4 anyway. The idea to push d4, obviously having a large center and restricting your opponent's mobility of their pieces. If your opponent takes here, which is what you'll see most commonly, you can either castle, which is a pretty solid move, or you can play this idea of queen b3, staring down the diagonal of your opponent's uncastled king, which is pretty bad news for them, because if they don't defend this properly, they are pretty fucked. Another variation of the accepted Evans Gambit you might see is the Anderssen Variation, seen after black retreats their bishop to e7. In this variation, your main idea is still to push d4, and black can either take you on d4, to which you just recapture, or they have this idea of knight a5, which is a completely robotic move, but it's stated as theory, and in this case, it's recommended mostly to retreat your bishop to one of these two squares, or you can take the pawn on e5 with your knight to defend your bishop, which is also referred to as the Cordel line of the Anderssen Variation. If your opponent retreats the bishop to d6, also known as the Stone-Ware Variation, the main idea is to, surprise surprise, push d4 anyway. This idea of d4 and getting this large center is basically the name of the game for the Evans Gambit, and you'll see mostly all variations having white push d4 at some point because it's such a powerful move, backed up by three of your most powerful pieces in the opening. Overall, the Evans Gambit is probably my favourite opening, and I highly recommend it for any players up to around 1800 or so, if you're looking for a pretty fun and interesting gambit to surprise people with. It's a strong offensive gambit which is both aggressive enough to get you into some pretty nice positions, while being flexible enough to let you slowly reel back if the opening doesn't work out as expected. If you remember to get a grip on the center and to keep attacking, this opening should help you either win more games or have fun trying. It also gives you the knowledge on a pretty good opening in and of itself, with the base Italian game being an opening which can take you to even master levels. Thanks for listening to my monotone rambling, and I'll see you in the next video.